Like it's not exclusive to a title. You don't have to be a PhD. You don't have to be an artist that's traveling every single month. Like it really is something that's open for anyone to join in if you're curious. Welcome to Art-Sci Currents, a podcast from the Crearte Foundation where we go deep into the lives and minds of people building at the intersection of art and science. This is a Prelude episode, and before we bring you into the conversations of this season, we want to open a door to share a little of where this project came from, why it exists, and what we believe is possible when curiosity is given permission to cross boundaries. I'm Nicia John, founder of the Crearte Foundation, and I'm joined today by my collaborator and friend, Brune Bettler. In this conversation, we talk about how we found each other inside this community, what it actually means to live between art and science, and why we think this moment right now is one worth paying attention to. We got to meet each one of our upcoming guests before we hit record, and what we found in those conversations confirmed everything we hoped this season would be. The episodes ahead are somewhat revolutionary, but first, let's start at the beginning. Hello, Brune.
Hi, Nicia.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm super excited to be here and to open up this new season.
I know, it's just so crazy that we're actually getting this off the ground after doing test versions and trying to talk to other people in the past. It's really cool to hop on here and start this conversation so that we can give context on what the episodes that are coming up will look like. It's been really cool to talk to you over the last, I guess, 2 years now. It hasn't been 2 years.
I feel like almost 3, maybe.
Wow, almost 3 years ago, when this was just like a baby idea. And now it's kind of coming to life in a very small way, but I feel like it's an important way. I'd love to like go back to that time of how we started collaborating in the first place through motion talks and just discussing and meeting people who are also at the intersection of art and science. Do you remember like what that was like?
Yeah, I actually totally do. In my own life, I think discovering kind of what art science is still very much a work in progress. But at the time, it was kind of a new thing entirely. You're the person who introduced this idea that art and science could come together and could be something greater than the two individual disciplines. I was coming from a background in science. I had done or was doing at the time an undergraduate degree in computer science and biology. So I feel like I was even looking for more technical sides of biology. I was finding that biology was very kind of flexible and flimsy sometimes, and I wanted some rigidity. But at the same time, I had this love for art and photography. The art and the science in my world existed very separately. And when I first met you, it was the first time that I was in a room of people who were in love with both the art and the science. And I've honestly been super energized and glued to your hips since. I'm
No, but I feel like it was also the first time I was in a room with people who were also artists and scientists. Because I remember going to one of your presentations, I think, from the McGill Arts Collective, this like film work that you had just done from your work in Barcelona. And I was like, oh my goodness, this girl is just like exactly where I'd imagine, what art and science, what it would look like in someone who's trying to pursue this. And so I was really inspired by your work in the film that you produced. And so I think just being in that room with all these different people from campus and from other universities nearby was really an eye opener to see what was possible, just to hear people talk about what they were passionate about. And now it's growing, and I think that's such an exciting thing to see.
I think what's most exciting about this new season is the speakers and the art scientists that we're interviewing are really settled in their kind of niche.
Yeah.
And it's actually been inspiring me in kind of reflecting on my own career. I'm currently doing a master's computational neuroscience, and it's making me realize that I think I want to do a PhD after my master's, but afterwards I actually think that I would love to fully delve into kind of this art science. So how has that language materialized for you, and how have you kind of crafted those words? What is your background leading you into art science?
Yeah, I'm coming from a background in classical ballet, and so I've been doing ballet for almost 17 years now. Only more professionally in the last 4 years or so, but it's been something that's been a part of my life for a very long time. My mom was a educational psychologist, and she taught a lot about psychology and how you think and how you move and the brain and different things. And I think that always latched on to my learning and education in ballet. And somehow there was a connection between those two. And I, from that, became very interested in neuroscience, just how the brain works in general. And so my art science combinations between ballet and neuroscience, but in particular motor research and how the brain coordinates movement, anticipates movement for creativity. I feel like I'm in the same shoe as you, even though I'm running this nonprofit. I don't yet have the answer figured out as to what my own art sci looks like. Like I'm pulling this community together and I'm listening to stories, but I was much of a learner in the process as I am a leader in the process. I get to really soak in how different people are doing the art side and even meet other dancers and scientists who are combining those different worldviews to create something at the intersection. And so for me, it probably just looks like dance neuroscience research. It probably looks like, testing dancers in a very structured way, but I'm sure there's way more than that. There's more beyond the lab as well. In the experience of talking to the people and just hearing from what others have to say, I feel like I'm learning what that language is and kind of developing and co-creating what that language is just to pull all these data points from different people and what they think it is so that we can develop something together. So I don't have my answer figured out yet, but I'm really here to learn and be a part of the guiding process for what this looks like.
Has your trajectory, your kind of endpoint changed as you are meeting more and more people at the intersection?
Yeah, for sure. Because when the nonprofit started, it was mostly for dancers and neuroscientists. I remember proposing the project, and it was about mapping people at the intersection of movement, and it was just looking for people who were mapping dance, mapping contemporary movement, mapping improvisation in a scientific way, whether it was physics, neuroscience, computational sciences, different things like that. And so that was my first vision of what my art side looked like. But just being able to discuss and see how big the world of art science even is, I think I've been able to change that mindset so that it's not just being limited to dance and science, but now it's a way larger movement beyond that one frame thinking, and that comes back to the language thing, right? Because we have a shared language, it can expand beyond the two fields that it originally started in.
I think for me again, because I feel like I'm still at the beginning of this journey. I've barely hit the tip of the iceberg, but it really seems like for me it's kind of collecting this community or understanding more, hearing more from people that are really fully in it. I This is a half-baked thought, but I actually have another question for you. Speaking of movement, why did you call this Art-Sci Currents? What is the relationship with currents?
You know what? In the beginning, I was looking for a name that sounded like newspaper, like, that sounded like a news or a journal article. And I was like, "Oh, currents. That's everything that's current is in art sci is what we're gonna talk about."
I was really yeah, I always imagined kind of the water bit.
I actually never thought of the water until last week. Except the message. I was like, wait a minute. Art-Sci Currents, it's actually a wave. It's a current of what's happening, not just now, but what's happened in the past, what's happening currently, what will happen in the future. And so it's just a continuous wave.
Yeah, I think more of the idea of a current kind of dragging things together. I mean, drag is maybe more of a negative word, but the notion that you're entering a flow of things that are going in a particular direction. And so for me, it's like the whole community building of like, we're hopping on this train. Maybe we don't know where it goes. Maybe you lose kind of as a single particle, you're entering this huge mess of current. Like you lose kind of your identity, maybe, but you enter this field of people, yeah, who speak a common language. I don't know anything about ballet, but I can again relate to you.
I like that because I put a lot of imagery in my mind and like in the currents in the water and how people might just hop onto that and they're just being pulled in this direction of something, something else at the end of the current, but everyone's kind of hopping on and joining in as you kind of go through different seas and across borders. I think that's another thing that the currents really ties in is the global aspect. There's so much in this. I didn't even think about this before.
The word serendipity is really coming up.
We have a global current, there's a time current, there's a trends current of art science, and there's a lot to dig into there. The name now is it's like, oh, that makes sense.
I kind of love that about art actually. And speaking of that movie that I made, I don't know if this is the case for science. Maybe I'm not quite at that level of science yet, but when you work with an art piece, it sometimes feels like you're collaborating with some sort of greater whole.
Mm.
In doing so, when that piece is finished, you're able to kind of zoom out and observe the piece. And I feel like the act of observing it or of showing it to others really. I feel like every time I rewatch my movie, for example, I get new things out of it. And still now, like I made that 3 years ago, and I'm still noticing things that either I'd intentionally put in or I had not intentionally put in. There's something super nice about, yeah, relooking at an art piece. So there's something about art that kind of, yeah, invites this sort of perspective change, which again, as I think the joy of kind of combining art and science is that people typically think of science as being something very rigid, but I think both art and science are open fields where people are trying to grasp at things that may or may not be visible, trying to connect ideas that may or may not be clearly connectable.
It's almost like you're taking these two endless things and making something at the intersection that's even more endless. In the art science process, while pulling things together and trying to see where things fit, it feels like there's a continuous unfolding and a rediscovery, like in your own work of ideas that seem to emerge. And even the artist himself or the scientist himself, the person at the intersection is able to learn from their own process, which I really like.
You used emerge. I was actually thinking of that just now in my head because in my master's currently, I think the part of science that I'm getting increasingly attracted to is this notion that as you're digging more into data, there are things that do just emerge. If you analyze data in a certain way, there are patterns that can just totally appear that you were not expecting at all. And I feel like that's, yeah, exactly what you're saying with art, that sometimes you can just look at it and something pops out and you're like, whoa, okay.
And it's interesting then to pull from the art and the science, like we said earlier, that the science is perceived as something more rigid, while the art is sometimes perceived as something more flowy. Then, with the things that emerge and that pop out, you can almost apply any one of those principles to reshape what that emerged thing looks like. So, you might apply something more scientific and logical to this thing, or it could be something more artistic. And with those little data points that keep popping up, then in the end, you have something that's completely different from what you would have imagined at the beginning. And I think that's just there's such a beauty about art science in the way that in the potential that it has to grow and to inspire and to encourage people and to allow people to learn at the intersection. Yeah, that's something that really keeps me going.
To jump on that, what would you say to those listening to this new season who are currently firmly on one or the other side? Why should why should people look to kind of combine the two or create a bridge between the two?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question that comes up often because the value of art science is not necessarily to pull away from the art by itself or the science by itself. Like I've always said, if you're in a ballet studio and you're working on a piece of choreography, then what's important right there is the choreography. Like that has a place. There's a place for the art to just be the art. And in a particular research project in health data, then there might be a place for the science to be the science. So art science should never be to replace and to say like, none of these things should exist on their own. But something that will probably come up in another episode is the idea of third spaces and what it means to have art science be something else and something in the middle where you have the option to consider it. So if there is a case where you're looking to bring things together, is that the option is here to allow the art and the science to inform each other. And so it's never to, yeah, not to replace, but to just add. And I hope that someone who's listening who might be in one place or the other, who may not even have considered that it's possible to add, will just now be able to see, okay, wait, there's another possibility here. It's not that I can just stay in my one lane and all, but I have to choose to kind of flip myself to be something else. But there is a way of thinking or way of being that gives permission for you to add something else to what you're currently doing.
Yeah, I like that word permission. I feel like something that I think has been important for me in kind of having the two interacting is definitely the notion of permission. That in science sometimes I feel like things are not necessarily permitted, whereas I feel like in art it's maybe more accepted to kind of have these crazy ideas and to just try it without fear of losing anything. And I think that's one of the joys that I have in science, bringing in the creative aspect is just playing. Play I think is really a fun kind of item at the intersection of art and science.
I like the idea of play because it makes it fun. I feel like art science should be fun. I think there are a lot of, rules that are important rules for science and important, I guess, ideas or conceptions about how art should be done. Art science seems to open up this element of play and this curiosity where it doesn't matter. You can try it, you can do it, you can attempt. It might fail, and that's okay. You can document the failure. Like there's a lot in there to just yeah, again, emerge to play to be curious about. I like that word play. Do you think then that everyone has some kind of capacity for art science in them?
I don't quite have an answer to this question. I think it's really interesting, but my gut feeling is definitely yes. If we think about that notion of play, I think that curiosity and play are such fundamental parts of that intersection, and I think awakening kind of a childlike part I think that we do all have. Yeah, I think we totally all have the capacity for art science. It goes back to that notion of permission. I feel like as we grow up, or at least the way that I grew up, I feel like you very quickly you're like, okay, the art people go the art direction, the science people go the science direction, the engineers go their direction. Everyone kind of does their own thing, and then at some point you wake up and you're like, wait, I've missed the turn for the art field. Like too late to go back. I think, for example, in my own experience, I think there was a few years where I was like, "Oh shoot, I would have loved actually to go to film school, but now I'm on this neuroscience track and I do love it, so I'm just gonna keep on going." So I think that childlike kind of ability to be like, you know what, I don't need to just ironically follow the current. There is another current that you can follow, which is this intersection.
If there's another current, I like that. There's so many different currents that you can follow because so many people can identify with this that they were given a choice or, based on family and based on economic different reasons. And they had to make a choice based on what seemed like the best option. And so a lot of people were influenced to choose a science route, even if they may have been able to, to keep going in a different arts route. And so different people have these different stories and they're like, wait a minute, how come I can't go back? Or where is the time that I have to even try it and experiment with a different kind of art or something else that my mind fancies? And then, we just get caught in the current again of something that is typical. You do this, you do that, you go here, you go there, and you don't turn back, you stay focused and specialized to PhD, postdoctoral level, and that's the end of that. But I think another thing that would be important to talk about is that your art science route doesn't have to be linear. So because time is finite in the day, we can only do a master's for so much of our day and so much of our week, but it doesn't mean that you can't go to film school after that. I think we get stuck in our head that, oh, after my master's, I should do a PhD or I should get a job and I can't go back to ballet school. But why not? Like, why can't you do that? In the end, it's art science anyway. It's just that the it doesn't have to be as linear.
So I guess for those that are listening, some people might be asking, okay, cool, so like you can just go off of your track that you're on, but why? Like, do you have a kind of convincing reason as to what is the benefit of getting off of that particular track and finding the intersection?
Something that guides me personally is just curiosity. I know what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the dance, I'm interested in the science, I'm interested in the research. And when the opportunity presents itself, I tend to weigh what's important for right now. So in the last 2 years, I had to change between my PhD programs, and I wasn't planning on doing dance full time, but there was an opportunity to do so. So because I knew I wasn't going to be in school right now, I have time to reapply to do other things. Then there's an opportunity to do dance. And that's not a typical route after your master's to do full-time ballet and then go back to your PhD. That doesn't make that's not the typical way that things go. But I think being open to the opportunities that come up is what can guide, even that transformation between, between the art and the science as you keep going. But it's not easy. Like you can't disregard finances, you can't disregard access. There's so many other things that will keep people from even being able to hop on that train in different ways and different moments. But I think again, permission.
I think also an openness to join kind of a greater whole and a greater community as we speak of this like big community. Been talking the two of us about how the world's problems are not single discipline problems, and so this notion that the intersection of art and science is not only as a way to feed curiosity, I think it's indeed an incredible way to feed curiosity. More importantly, there are a lot of problems or just topics these days in the world that really do require a new way of talking about them, a new way of communicating them, a new way of interacting with them. In the same idea that you can live your life going and living in a single track, the same can be said about problems that we've been tackling over the last few years as a society as a whole. And at some point, either we've already hit the wall and we are just all banging our heads against the wall,
Yeah.
or we're nearing that point and we can all see it. And I think this intersection of art and science can totally be the way to see new perspectives and to interact differently with these.
Quick question. Have you ever felt like the only person in the room who cares about the logic and the creativity, the experiment and the exhibition, the data sets and the performance? Well, you're not alone, you just haven't found your people yet. The CREMAP Directory of Innovators and Art Scientists is the Crearte Foundation's global directory of multidisciplinary minds, a searchable, growing community of practitioners who live exactly at that intersection. Create your free profile, get discovered, and find collaborators who actually speak your interdisciplinary language. To learn more, head to creart.ca/cremap, that's creart.ca/CREMAP, and join the network.
So you had mentioned a while ago that when you first created the nonprofit that you kind of were coming at it under the assumption that you were creating something totally new, but as you did more research, you found out that it was not only something that already existed, but that had a lot of history. So again, to the audience, why is this group of people in this community, why is this platform important?
Well, we can kind of go back to the theme of currents, in that things keep popping up in society and there are trends in the way that art science keeps coming up. Interdisciplinarity comes in waves, it seems like, over the years, and that people are really, really interested, and then it kind of dies down, and it really, really interested and dies down again. And I think what I'd love to see this time is for there to be some kind of root change or root foundation that helps the current stay alive. So when I first started, it felt like the art science didn't exist. A little bit here and there from the communities I was in at school, but outside of that, I just didn't realize it was a thing. I didn't know about people who've done it before. And so it just felt like, wow, I don't see anyone else doing this. How can this be possible? And again, it was coming from particularly that dance neuro space. And so I didn't even know about the other art sci combinations at the time. And I think by allowing the nonprofit to be shaped by these stories and shaped by these ideas and kind of take it from a more global perspective instead of just an institutional perspective or a city-based perspective, which is what a lot of current art science initiatives do. And that's not a bad thing, but it's just that it kind of limits what people see and how people approach the idea. And so what the foundation is hopefully trying to do is to create some kind of connection between the communities that already exist so we can band together and say this is what we need, like we need to go forward consistently and continuously with these various ideas or principles in mind. And the more we talk about those ideas from different perspectives, like we have people from Canada to the US to the UK to all across Europe, people in Asia, in India, like, what are you getting from your experience and your culture in art science? And how can we, because of the shared language that we have, how can we band together to say, this is what we need, this is what we want, and then influence change, so we can actually have a sustainable career, a sustainable future in art science. I've seen nonprofits in the past, as I was doing my research, nonprofits pop up and then they die out in 2 years or 3 years because there isn't enough funding to sustain them, or there aren't enough people, or not enough traction. They can't do workshops anymore. Like, there's so many different reasons why these things fizzle out. We're on one of those highs right now, rise on the current. And this time I'd love for it to stay there so that we can all really benefit for real this time, like to keep going forward and know, okay, this person is doing that, that person is doing this here, and connect with them and keep it on the forefront of the general public or the general government's minds.
And I think I'm not alone in saying that when I was looking for speakers for this or art scientists for this season, it was an absolutely incredible process to go out and dig and find these people. But my gosh, was it a process to find these people? Because as you're saying, everybody has their little community, and I'm currently in Zurich, so I was looking around Zurich, and there are indeed a lot of these kind of there's like an art science program for people to come in and kind of have the funding and stuff, but it's again very localized. And I love the idea of you wanting to create something that is global and that goes across any and all boundaries and borders. I think that's yeah, super important and also just extremely exciting. I'm so on board and I will follow you till the end of time. Yeah, to be meeting people from all over the world who are doing such unique things, but again, we're all so connected under this idea of this third space, which we'll talk about.
It's like, coming back to that data point, right? Where the more data points you have in a scientific way of thinking is the more evidence for this thing to even exist, right? And so the larger the sample size, the more you can really make a conclusion. So if we keep taking sample sizes from very small communities and, then the resources in that one community die out after a couple years, then we're just going to keep picking up the same trends over and over in the same place over and over again. Whereas if we now create a population, like a global population of people that are easily accessible, you know what they're doing, their work is being amplified, their stories are being heard, their way of thinking is being expressed so that other people can identify with, then you start picking up other trends in this current population where, oh, there's a way of thinking, oh, there's a method, there might be a principle, there might be a theory. Like honestly, it's almost becoming like the art scientist is a group to study in itself because of the things that people are able to produce and to see and to say and just their way of seeing the world. I feel like it can be so different from what I've heard. And so we're creating our own case studies almost so that there is something to come out of listening to these different perspectives on what art science is on a global scale. So last season, we started Art-Sci Currents in a very different format. We were doing videos and you were running around Montreal filming people. Thank you for that. What do you think came out of that season that is helping us to go forward now?
So much. I think it's definitely, I mean, clearly if there's a season two, it means that there's an interest and a desire to create more. So I think again with the whole current theme, that it made us really want to push forward. It wasn't just a one-off like, oh, let's show off kind of who are the art scientists in the Montreal community or the Canadian community. It was really, I think, I mean, every interaction that I had, also just being in person, as much as I love, the whole global community, I think being in person is super cool. So it really opened the door to walk into people's homes and to see, yeah, to get to know kind of on a human level and on a kind of space level to see how everyone organized their space.
And I think as I came over to Europe and started doing more work on this side, I was able to then see that, that particular group of people we were attracting at the time was also present in Europe. We had people from Madrid, someone from London kind of pop in. I went to this conference in Eindhoven, and there were a few people from the Netherlands. And so then it became in person and virtual, which is interesting at that time because we weren't prepared for any of it. But we were just diving in with, I guess, a goal and a dream of trying to document these stories. And yeah, I totally agree that what came from it is that it's, I guess, a proof of concept that, people are actually interested in hearing what these stories are and hearing how people do the art science in the first place. So why not expand that? And now that we kind of moved from just the Montreal bubble and even the McGill bubble or the undergraduate or graduate student bubble, there are people now we can see who are doing art science in the world as like serious professionals who have history and doing this for 20 years. And there's so much more even to learn from them and their experience. Both experiences are so important. The upcoming experience of what is it like on the ground to trying to build something from scratch, but also from the people who have been doing it for so long to see what were your challenges, what were your pain points, what do you learn? What do you aspire to see? Or is there anything that's missing? Or is there anything that you love about art science? I think that's why we're trying to get the season two out so that we just get more inspiration from the people who are already experienced in this.
Okay, so to close it off, I guess just a last bit of energy as we go. What are you most excited about for this second season and for the future?
For the second season, I'm really excited to just listen, if I'm being so honest. really want to listen to people and just sit there and be in awe of what they're doing. And then I can take the data, not the data, but I can take the what I've learned and put it into something, actual later on. But I'm excited to be present in asking questions, like getting to unpack people's minds and he's like, wait, so this is what you're doing and this is why you're doing it. That's so inspiring. I want to sit there and that's what I'm excited for.
And for everyone listening, Nicia's an incredible interviewer. I am always inspired by how you do everything organizationally and how you interview people. And I think, yeah, if your goal is to be more present, I mean, I don't even know how that's possible because really you're able to listen, integrate ideas, and then I mean I've heard people in the interviews even reflect on their own words based on questions that you ask, and I find that just super inspirational as well. So I think for all the people listening, hang in there because it'll be just incredible. I'm excited to be inspired as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Brune. I hope audience themselves feels like they were seen or that they can place themselves perhaps in a story like, oh, that's something that I identify with or I resonate with. And I hope the listeners themselves feel like they can be a part of it too. Like it's not exclusive to a title. You don't have to be a PhD. You don't have to be an artist traveling every single month. Like it really is something that's open for anyone to join in if you're curious. If you're curious, then just get on board and join us. What we found in every pre interview conversation this season was something we didn't entirely expect. Not just practitioners doing interesting work, but people whose way of seeing the world had genuinely shifted because of it. Art science does not simply communicate knowledge. It creates the conditions for reorientation, changing how we think, feel, perceive, relate, and ultimately live with what we know. That's what this season is about, and we can't wait for you to tune in to the episodes ahead. I'm Nicia John, this is Art-Sci Currents, and the first episode drops this week, beginning with someone who's been proving art science for over 50 years.